President Trump is pushing forward with his campaign of retribution after being acquitted in the Senate impeachment trial last week. The president withdrew the nomination of former U.S. Attorney Jessie Liu. She was tapped for a top Treasury Department post. Liu was a federal prosecutor in Washington who oversaw several cases referred by former special counsel Robert Mueller. And one of those cases involved Roger Stone. The ex-Trump campaign advisor initially faced up to 9 years in prison after being convicted on 7 charges, including lying to officials and witness tampering. But last night, 4 prosecutors working on the case resigned after senior Justice Department officials intervened to reduce the sentencing recommendation. Those officials came from Attorney General William Barr's office. The president is praising Barr for taking charge. On Wednesday afternoon, Mr. Trump refused to say whether or not he would pardon Stone.
I want to thank the Justice Department for seeing this horrible thing. And I didn't speak to them, by the way, just so you understand. They saw the horribleness of a 9-year sentence for doing nothing. You have murderers and drug addicts. They don't get 9 years. 9 years for doing something that nobody even can define what he did. Somebody said he put out a tweet, and the tweet, you based it on that. We have killers, we have murderers all over the place. Nothing happens. And then they put a man in jail and destroy his life, his family, his wife, his children. 9 years in jail. It's a disgrace.
Let's bring in Jill Colvin, Sheryl Gay Stolberg, and Rebecca Roiphe. Jill is a White House reporter for the Associated Press. Sheryl is a congressional correspondent for the New York Times. And Rebecca is a CBSN legal contributor and former assistant district attorney for New York County. Welcome to all of you. Jill, let me start with you. Do we know why Attorney General Barr decided to intervene in the Stone case?
Well, at this point, the Justice Department has insisted that it had nothing to do with the president's tweet. Just to go through the timeline here, it was shortly there was originally that sentencing recommendation that said that Stone should spend between 7 to 9 years in prison. The president fired off a tweet, and shortly after that, there was this new public recommendation, not actually setting out a number of years that they believe that Stone should spend in prison, but instead saying that they believe that initial sentencing recommendation was extreme and didn't fit what he was convicted of doing. The Justice Department has insisted that it made the decision before the president's tweet went out. They have insisted that there was no contact between the president and any of the prosecutors who were working on that. Nonetheless, the president has made his displeasure very clear over the last number of days. We've seen a newly emboldened President Trump since he was acquitted by the Senate on his impeachment charges. And as we've seen in the days since, he is now on a tear going after all of these people whom he believes disrespected him or served against him during the impeachment trial.
Rebecca, let me get your legal perspective here. First of all, is 9 years appropriate given the crimes attributed to Roger Stone, first of all?
Right. I mean, so the line prosecutors here were recommending the sentencing guideline range. They're actually obligated under justice policy to do that. And if they wanted to depart downward, if they wanted to be more lenient, they would have had to get supervisor approval for that. So they were really doing what prosecutors do. Now, there may be an argument that that sentencing guideline range is too high. And if the president or Attorney General Barr is concerned in a general way about the harshness of our sentencing guidelines, by all means, they should revisit that and look at those things. But to do so in the context of an individual case that is politically charged, where clearly the president has expressed a strong interest in the outcome, is incredibly troubling.
Can the judge in this case, Amy Jackson, give Stone the initially recommended sentence?
Yes, she has discretion to do that. And it's, everybody, all eyes are on her. What is she going to do? She also wants to appear as if she's preserving her own integrity and the judicial branch's integrity as impartial. So she could also ask those Department of Justice employees to tell her what happened. She has a huge amount of discretion here, and we're all looking to see what she actually does under these circumstances.
I'm just wondering, Rebecca, as a judge, though, I mean, she's facing sort of this enormous pressure when you have this, as you said, politically charged kind of case where the President of the United States is making statements very publicly about what he thinks needs to happen here.
Yeah, and she's in, as are many of these officials, in an incredibly difficult position now because she's an Obama appointee. She doesn't want to appear as if she has some kind of
political motivation.
Which I don't. I mean, she's a good judge. I think there would be no reason for the inference that's true, but she's now has to be concerned with the appearance of that. That's not how our judges should operate. And that's where the corrosive effect of these kinds of tweets happens, because not only is it that they might politicize justice, but that those who are responsible for administering justice might fear even the appearance of impropriety and then do something other than what they just would ordinarily do.
So, Sheryl, let me ask you, Attorney General Barr will testify before the House Judiciary Committee now on March 31st. Why do lawmakers want to hear from him?
Well, I think they want to hear from him to answer precisely these kinds of questions that you are raising. Why did he change recommendations and overrule his line prosecutors? Is he carrying out the orders of the president? And does he think that this kind of action by him amounts to political interference? And I'm sure they want to hear from him on a number of other matters as well, but I think this is really top of mind right now. How independent is his Justice Department?
Well, and Sheryl, as you know, Democratic leaders are calling for an investigation into Barr's actions, and some, like Senator Richard Blumenthal, want Barr to resign. Let's play some of what Blumenthal said Wednesday morning.
The President of the United States is shattering any pretense to independence and integrity on the part of the Department of Justice. Attorney General William Barr ought to be ashamed and embarrassed and resign as a result of this action directly interfering in the independent prosecution of Roger Stone.
So, Sheryl, what actions do you expect lawmakers to take as the president continues this post-impeachment purge? And also, are you hearing anything from Republicans who are bothered by what's taken place?
So I think, frankly, there really are no actions that lawmakers can take. Democrats in the House have already tried to impeach the president. They did impeach the president. We saw how that worked out. He was acquitted in the Senate, and this has clearly freed his hands. Among Republicans, I would say there is a feeling of what I might call quiet unease. They really do not want to talk about this. This is making them very uncomfortable, many of them. Some of them, the president's strongest defenders, are still defending him, saying, well, if it weren't for Roger Stone being involved, this would just be a routine matter. But a number of them are expressing, without explicitly criticizing the president, because they're afraid to do that, they are expressing concern about political interference. Senator Susan Collins of Maine said there should never be any political interference. Other senators, Republicans, have echoed that. But they really do not want to get in a position of being in a fight with this president.
And Jill, let me ask you, even if we don't know for sure that the president asked Barr to intervene, how has Barr shaped the Justice Department around the president's efforts to retaliate against political opponents?
I mean, he's really transformed the Justice Department. You have to think back to when Jeff Sessions was in charge, what a contentious relationship that was. You know, even though Sessions agreed with the president on so many things and put forward so many elements of the president's agenda that he was interested in. You know, the two of them were aligned on immigration, on approaches toward crime, a lot of different issues. But of course, the president never trusted Jeff Sessions, felt like he betrayed him when he recused himself from the Russia investigation. Now you have an entirely different dynamic. You know, Barr is somebody that the president deeply trusts. He's someone who has repeatedly, caused Democrats to raise concerns about how independent the Justice Department now is under him, and also continuing questions about what this means now for the relationship between what is supposed to be an independent, federal prosecutor and the White House. I mean, I think there was such a notable moment earlier today. You know, Republicans or Democrats have raised again and again questions about what the president has taken away from impeachment. Will this embolden him? And the president was asked that today in the Oval Office. What is his lesson he's taken away from impeachment? And it wasn't, I don't want to cross these lines. His answer was, Democrats are crooked and my poll numbers are up.
Rebecca, I want to get your sense as someone who, understands the climate that federal prosecutors work within. If you are a career Justice Department official, what is the unmistakable message that you have received as a result of what has happened?
Right. I mean, I think there's a very clear message here, which is that, you back off, you follow directions, you do not push things when you think that there might be a specific presidential interest. And it's not like it's a mystery to anybody, because the president makes his opinion known so clearly in these tweets, which itself is a departure from norms. Most presidents would never, ever say what their opinion is about an individual case. Just that is an extreme departure from where we were before this administration. So I think that, department officials, they understand that. They hear it. And, I think we have very strong institutions. I'm not at a moment of panic, but I think it's concerning. And I think people are justifiably worried and justifiably questioning the legitimacy and the independence of the Department of Justice right now.
Jill, I also want to ask you about Jessie Liu. As we mentioned, the president pulled her name from consideration for a top Treasury post. Who is she, and why did she draw the ire of the president?
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure if you were coming to me there.
Oh, sorry,
I apologize.
Jill. No.
No problem. So she is somebody who has had a top job as a United States attorney running the Washington office, and she was nominated for a top position at the Department of Treasury. It's the number 3 position. She was going to be running terrorist and financial crimes, overseeing that department, and this nomination was pulled at the last minute on Tuesday. She was supposed to have her Senate confirmation hearing on Thursday. And she's somebody who has been involved in a whole bunch of cases related to the Mueller investigation. She worked on the Rick Gate case. Remember, that was top deputy on Trump's 2016 campaign. She worked on the Flynn case, and of course, she worked on the Roger Stone case. And there are people that have flagged concerns about how she ran the office. It's unclear if those concerns were raised directly with the president, but he decided to pull this nomination this week.
All right, Sheryl, before we go, you also have some new reporting that about House Democrats' concerns with Senator Bernie Sanders. What can you tell us about that?
So the centrist Democrats in the House, and also in the Senate, I might add, are growing increasingly concerned about the rise of Bernie Sanders as a potential Democratic nominee. Democrats flipped 40 seats in 2018 to win control of the House, and those are all seats in these kind of swing districts, many of them won by President Trump, where a Bernie Sanders candidacy is not going to go over well, and they are worried about it. Congressman Dean Phillips of Minnesota just told me that he is very worried that Bernie Sanders could make life hard for him. He respects Senator Sanders, but he said he won a seat that had not been won by a Democrat since 1958. Many of his voters are independents or they're centrist Democrats. Some of them are Republicans, and Bernie Sanders at the top of the ticket is just going to be a rough sell for people like him. And if enough people like Dean Phillips lose their seats, then Democrats will lose the House majority. So there's real concern up here, and there's concern on the Senate side too.
Something we'll continue to watch. Jill Colvin, Sheryl Gay Stolberg, and Rebecca Roiphe, thank you all very much.